Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Pulse. This show will explore the connections between African Americans, Jamaicans, Ghanaians, Kenyans, Brazilians, Haitians, and African descendants from around the world. We have live interviews, demonstrations, and entertainment. The program will holistically and critically look at economics, politics, education, entertainment, sports, and health. Today, we start by looking at Sudan. Sudan is Africa's largest country that is potentially going to be divided into two nations. In this episode, we are going to talk with Blanche Foster. She is the acting executive director of the Darfur Rehabilitation Project. A lifelong community activist, Blanche has held numerous transformative positions, including board president of the Interfaith Hospitality Network of Essex County, a program that helps the homeless. She was also served as the community outreach coordinator for the United Nations Association of New Jersey in its global project for economics with Rutgers University. Blanche, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Good. Well, we're excited that you're here. And, we think that it's important for us to really explore this whole issue surrounding Darfur and Sudan. And I know that you've been right at the forefront for a long time now. Tell us, how long have you been working with Darfur?
Too long, because there are many who say that there is a genocide there. You can call it by any name that you choose, but the fact is there are hundreds of thousands of people who are dead, who have been removed from their land, who are traveling anywhere that they can in order to find safety. There are great measures being taken to bring peace and reconciliation to the land, and yet the fighting continues, the dead continue through whatever means, either through killings or through health problems, all things that we as human beings should not have to face. So DRP, which is what we call Darfur Rehabilitation Project, was begun in 2004 by some Darfurians who are in this area, and they asked me to work with them in order to start a nonprofit organization. So I joined them in 2005, and here we are now, 2011, and the killing still continues.
Right. I know, and it's a tragic situation. So that we have to think about all the different ways that people are being involved and ways people are not being involved, because I think that part of the mission that you're on is to talk about the fact that there's not as many people involved who should be involved.
Absolutely.
And I think that one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you is that your whole desire to do this as a volunteer, first of all, and as a community activist. Why don't you, before we get too much into the whole issue about Darfur, tell me something about your issue about volunteering and community activism.
Well, I come from a family of volunteering.
Okay.
My grandmothers volunteered prior to them, as did my grandfathers. And I guess if I went a generation beyond that, they would have been volunteering too. And people throughout my family, on both sides, my dad and my mom's, were volunteers. And they were examples for not only me, but others as well. So I've been volunteering ever since I was a kid. Started out by going down to the multiple sclerosis office and doing clerical work for them when I was an early teen, and continue to do it all along. I have never stopped. And I'm happy to say that my children have done the same, and others that I feel are important people in my life also continue to volunteer.
Now, what would you say, though, about people who today we look around and lots of young folks and other people, they just have no involvement at all. They don't do anything active. What is the rhyme and reason for getting involved in something like Darfur, something like the DRP, and this issue that is not in the United States? It doesn't necessarily affect you here. You could go and live your life as you normally do, but here you are volunteering for something at a very high level for something that's on the other side of the world. Why should people get involved?
Actually, it's 9,000 miles away. So I agree with you. Yes, it's a long way away. But the fact of the matter is, one human being is killing another human being. Or if they're not actively killing another human being, their actions are bringing harm to another human being. And so it doesn't matter to me whether it's Darfur or whether it's Rwanda or whether it's Bosnia or any other place on the face of the earth. We as human beings need to be able to look at ourselves critically and actually say, there's enough. We need to do whatever we can to halt it. That's really why I'm most actively involved at this point.
Okay. So can you tell me something specifically about Darfur in terms of what the issues are? I understand that, we look at it, maybe all of our listeners don't understand, but, we know there's two sides to this issue. Tell us a little something about that.
There are two sides to every story, as you point out. And what is going on in Darfur is very complicated, extremely complicated, mainly because you have people who are connected in ways and have been connected for 4 centuries at least, living together in peace, living together, sharing each other's hopes and their passion for education, for living a better life, their skills in trade and in herds people and in farming, people learning to share, to coexist in a very harsh environment. The Sahara Desert is there. And climate change has been affecting how these people have lived for centuries. And yet here they are now at each other's throats. Not only is it impacting upon Darfur, it's impacting throughout all of Africa. Because Darfur used to be one of the main trade routes of Africa. And there is even a route that's known as the 40 days route, where it would take 40 days to travel by camel safely from the Sudan or from Darfur specifically into Egypt.
Okay.
And along that trade route, you had many people traveling through Darfur in order to go to Egypt for trade. You also had people who were traveling through Darfur to go to Mecca.
Okay.
And on their return, many of them settled in Darfur.
Well, we're gonna continue this dialogue. I think this is important for us to know in terms of how this all fits within the context of it. You're watching The Pulse. We're here with Blanche Foster, and we will return with you in just a moment.
Travel advisories to small business loans, student loans to taxes online. Whether you have information to get or ideas to give, USA.gov is the official place to connect with your government. From surplus car auctions to finding a new job, our new mobile apps will keep you updated on the go. So check out USA.gov, because the country runs better when we stay connected.
Every day, thousands of people are diagnosed with macular degeneration, a disabling eye disease that leads to severe vision loss. As a scientist conducting research for the American Health Assistance Foundation, I want you to know that there is hope that a cure and new treatments for macular degeneration will soon be found, but only if we can continue our groundbreaking research. Learn about my research. Call 1-800-437-2423 or visit ahaf.org for free publications on eye disease.
Welcome back. We're now here to talk more about Darfur. Blanche Foster is the executive director of the Darfur Rehabilitation Project, and she's also a recipient of the United Nations Millennium Development Goal, the Women's Rights Empowerment Award. So we want to welcome her back. Thank you for joining us. And let's get right into the discussion about Darfur, though. I want us to really look at what is the work that the Darfur Rehabilitation Project, what are you guys doing?
Oh my. We have a mission statement that's probably very broad, but the reason is because the founders of DRP, Darfur Rehabilitation Project, are Darfurians. Okay. And as a result, they have relatives who are in the refugee camps or each one of them has a story. One of our board members, for instance, had to travel through 9 countries before he finally ended up here in the United States after his brother had been assassinated. Another is supporting 40 people, if you can believe that, all family members who are looking to him in order to provide for them back in Khartoum. So the things that we have done have been extraordinary in the sense that we started a victims program with Wanda Aiken and Raymond Brown, who are here in Newark, and those victims' cases were the first that were ever accepted by the ICC, the International Criminal Court. And this is something that we feel was an important step to make. We also have traveled to the Gaga camp and brought clothing and books and took the religious leaders over so that they could try to communicate with the leaders and find out what was going on. Most recently, we undertook a partnership with 24 Hours for Darfur. It took 3.5 years in order to bring this particular study to fruition, and it took nearly 4 months to be there. But DRP, 24 Hours, and other like-minded people visited all of the refugee camps in Chad in order to find out what it is the Darfurians themselves want, instead of others trying to tell them what they need to have.
Okay. So, and if you think about the work that you guys have done as a project here again, so as we say, we're 9,000 miles away from Sudan and this part of Sudan, the impact that it's having, how do the people there feel the impact? What is it that they experience, and how do they receive you all?
They've learned to trust DRP. They know that when we tell them that we're going to do something, we do it. So many times people will go over to Darfur or to Chad and they will speak with the people who are there and promise them that they're going to come back and help them and actually do not. Most recently, and I won't say that DRP did this alone, there were several young journalists and attorneys from hand that had been arrested in the Sudan. There were others that had been arrested in Egypt, and DRP actually added its voice to the voices of other NGOs, and these prisoners were released. And this is something that you wouldn't pay too much attention to because here in the United States, we don't know about it.
Right, right. Well, you know, I think that that's a great idea that here you have something which you're bringing some movement, you know, and you build this level of trust with folks who don't know who to trust sometimes.
This is true.
And I want us to just delve a little bit into the differences between what's going on with the people who call the Janjaweed and the Darfurians. Who are these people, and what is the kind of nature of the conflict? Some people say that it's between Islam and Christianity. Is that what it is?
It is not. It is not. And that's what I was referring to earlier on. I tried to give you some background from a historical perspective of how these people have lived with each other as neighbors for centuries and coexisted with each other. The Janjaweed is a militia group that is being financed, so many believe, by the Sudanese government. And it has been working along with the Sudanese government and sometimes the Sudanese army in order to do its heinous work. I am not an all-time authority on it, so I don't want you to say, oh, how could this woman know this? My information is based upon what I've seen by way of reading, what I've seen by way of film and by way of photos that are sent to us, and we see the acts that have been brought down upon the head of innocent people. And as a result, the innocents are the ones that are really paying the price for a philosophy, perhaps, that the government has at this point.
Okay. And what do you think about in terms of looking at how now you have the Darfurians who are in a discussion with the government about dividing the country up?
When you say the Darfurians in a discussion, you're referring to Southern Sudan?
Yes, Southern Sudan and Northern Sudan.
Exactly.
What do you think about that? Do you think that'll be a solution for the situation in Darfur?
I don't know that it will immediately impact upon Darfur, because what has been going on in Southern Sudan has been going on for 22 years at least. That's how long their war has been lasting. And these people have wanted to have, obviously, their freedom for a very long time. There has been much confusion in the area because during the time of colonization, when the British were there, they arbitrarily drew lines throughout the Sudan, and they drew lines which were very confusing by way of natural resources, and for instance, oil. They drew lines that separated families, that put them in community with other families that were not directly related with them. So there's been an awful lot of confusion, for want of a better word.
Please stay with us. We will be back in just a moment to talk more about Darfur.
I'm Gary Williams. When I'm not coaching the Terrapins basketball, I'm committed to the fight against cancer. A lot of men put off colon cancer screening and think if they aren't having a problem, then why bother? Man to man, your best defense against colon cancer is to talk to your doctor about screening. Fear the turtle, don't fear colon cancer screening.
A message from the University of Maryland School of Medicine, the Terrapins, and the American College of Gastroenterology.
I'm Jessica Mendoza, U.S. Olympic gold and silver medalist. I never take my eyesight for granted. Neither should you. Doesn't matter how old you are, you could be losing your vision to glaucoma without knowing it. Take care of your sight. Schedule regular eye exams for yourself and those you love. Call 1-800-437-2423 or go to ahaf.org for free information and publications from National Glaucoma Research.
Welcome back to The Pulse. I am Dr. Khalfani, and my guest today is Blanche Foster. She is the Acting Executive Director of the Darfur Rehabilitation Project and the recipient of proclamations from the city of Newark. Welcome back, Blanche.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And I'm, really we're getting into this, the nuts and bolts of what's going on in Darfur and the potential of the South and the North dividing up. But there's a bigger issue here. If we look at what's going on, we think about what's been going on in all of Africa, in Egypt and Tunisia and Libya. All of these things are really important for us to think about. We need to think about, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the impact of those other events happening, and how might they, plus the vote for dividing up the Sudan, the largest country in Africa, how might that impact what's going on in Darfur at this time? Mm-hmm.
I find it really interesting because although Darfur and the Sudan, for that matter, happen to be a area where you have desert, high temperatures, and seem really barren to those of us who are in the Western world, they have not only the latest technology when it comes to, what is it, YouTube or I'm showing my age.
YouTube and Twitter
and all that sort of thing. But they have the cell phone. And the cell phone has been used for quite a long time for communication. They use them for survival. They use them for war. They use them for peace. So I think that the impact of what is occurring now from a technological point of view has not left Darfur behind. I think they're right up in the same place, so to speak, from a technological point of view. The difference between the South and Darfur, however, is that the South has always been separate from the North by way of ideology, by way of religion, by way of its form of governments, having each individual tribe being in charge of its own area, whereas Darfur has been closely linked to Khartoum. And despite the fact that the current administration is very much against Darfur, I believe, will have its affiliation continue with Khartoum as opposed to trying to separate, as the South has done, and on its own.
Right. And you know, I mean, when we look at what's going on with Libya right now, we look at what's going on with Egypt, when we look at what's going on in all of these places where there's transformation, I think that we see that there's positive and negatives with the transformation, and that we don't know all the impacts that are going to you know, we can't predict what's going to happen. All we can do is look at them and see that we know that certain things are definitely happening. One is that the people there are using the technologies you mentioned, are talking about transformation, are talking about needing something new in terms of they don't want to be victimized anymore. They don't want anything. You know, and there's a long history of these things, as you mentioned. I mean, obviously, if we look way back in history, we can look to see that what happened in ancient Kemet, which today is Egypt, as they call it, that this transformation is a powerful piece.
It is. It is. Democratization is running throughout that area at the moment. It may not be a reality, but it certainly is in the eyes and in the minds of the people who live in that area. And I find it really interesting how casual we here in the United States can be about that very valuable form of government and what others are so willing to do in order to achieve it.
Well, I mean, I think that those are some important pieces. I think that, you know, we want to think about how and where we can do what we need to do. If we want to be involved with the Darfur Rehabilitation Project, how could someone be involved with that? What would they need to do?
Oh, thank you for asking that. DRP is an all-volunteer organization. I myself am a full-time volunteer, and we need all the help we can get. You could go on our website, which is www.darfurrehab.org, or you could call us at 973-274-9424. We live in an electronic age. You don't have to come into the office in order to volunteer. You can make an offer, and wherever you are, we can communicate with you in such a way that you can help us in all that has to be done.
Well, I know that there's so much more to be talked about, but unfortunately we're not going to be able to cover it all today. We have such a short time with our program, but I really want to thank you for joining us and for getting into this discussion. There's so much more to be discussed. We're actually going to have you come back so that we can have a much more in-depth discussion about this. And I want to thank my guest, Blanche Foster, for coming. And I want to thank you all for joining us to talk about this important issue. And we will see you next time.